No.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. I thought last time I had issues and I can hear you. We're off to the races. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Roxanne.
Good day, Roxanne. We're just about to get started.
Okay, folks, it's coming on 1 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. See, we have a quorum in the room. I'm going to have Sally just keep attendance on her attendance sheet rather than do a roll call. But welcome back to the boardroom at the MVCA. It's nice to be sitting in a room surrounded by faces, and of course, there are lovely faces on the screen in front of me that I can see. But it's nice. So welcome to our first sort of real hybrid meeting for the board. So you've all seen a copy of the agenda. I'm going to ask if somebody could move adoption of the agenda. Moved by John Inglis, seconded by Paul Kehoe. Oh, my apologies. I forgot to note that item number 6 on the agenda is an item that will need to be moved in camera for discussion. So all in favor of adopting the agenda? Agenda is adopted. If you have a declaration, if you have a conflict of interest or anything to declare, this is the time to do it. You can also raise your concerns or anything we want to know at an agenda item. Just let us know if you feel that you're in that position. We also have the minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of the last board meeting, please? Moved by Stephen Lewis, seconded by Chuck. All in favor of adopting the minutes from the last meeting? The minutes are adopted. Motion is carried. Item number 2 on our agenda under main business is our watershed conditions report. And I'll turn the floor over to Jen North to give us her presentation. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just need my PowerPoint pulled up.
Sorry, just bear with me for a moment while we find the, I'm gonna minimize that. There we go. Perfect. Okie doke. And oh, I can't see it for that. You start and I will figure out how to make it fully expanded.
Okay.
There you go.
So with this summer, with the help of above average rainfall, levels and flows throughout the watershed have been sitting slightly above normal for this time of year and above any drought conditions. So we had a really good summer, lots of water in the system. The upper lakes have remained fairly stable over the last couple months, again, due to the amount of rain we received. Right now, the majority of the lakes are sitting slightly above historical normals. So everything's kind of throughout the whole watershed is sitting kind of at the same stage. Flows in the main river have also been stable, staying above 10 CMS, which is very good for this time of year. This is due to the drawdown of Crotch Lake, as well as the additional wet summer. We do expect it to stay within this range for the month of September and expect to stay kind of slightly higher than normal flows throughout the fall as we try and get this water out of the system. Crotch Lake level is sitting above average for this time of year. Again, due to the amount of water in the system. So it's sitting just over 30 centimeters above where it historically would be. This is giving us lots of water to augment downstream, giving us that over 10 CMS flow, constant flow. For this reasons, levels on Dalhousie Lake and Mississippi Lake have been pretty much sitting above normal for majority of the last couple months. The fall drawdowns have started this week as normal, and as per schedule, the drawdowns of Kashawakmak, Mississauga and Big Gull will commence after the Thanksgiving weekend. So, and the next slide, the long range forecasts are calling for a fairly normal fall with normal temps and slightly drier forecast from what we've been seeing. This will help get that excess water out of the system before lakes start to freeze up. So right now we're in a good spot. If we do see a substantial amount of rain this fall, we could be in a situation where we could see higher flows than normal come December. But as of right now, and if we do get a nice normal fall, we have lots of time to get that water out of the system and everything should be fine. So that's it. Any questions?
If you're joining us online and you have any questions, I would just, I can see all of you, just wave your hands or put your yellow hand up. Anyone have any questions for Jen? Phil?
Last year, there was some kind of a problem up at Mazenal Lake where it kind of overflowed. I think I've got the year right. Has that been repaired? And
Yes, that was the overflow of the bypass was in 2019, and that was repaired the year after.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Jen? Seeing none, thank you, Jen.
Perfect, thank you.
With that, we can move on to item 3 on the agenda. The Carlton Place Dam Safety Review Report with Euro Kundelik is making the report.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we can.
All right, fantastic. So basically the dam safety for Carlton Place was identified as a priority project in our 10-year capital plan. And the dam never had DSR actually done since the dam was constructed in 1973. So it's almost 50 years. So this is a major gap that needs to be addressed to meet, obviously, all the provincial dam safety requirements. So in response, we issued an RFP to 3 consultants. It was last month. We received 2 proposals. And the project will be awarded to DM Wills in the amount of $47,450. My report provides a breakdown table with those submissions and MVCA's evaluation of the submissions. I should also say that MVCA applied for WECI funding earlier this year to help finance this project. And we were once again successful. So we received the funding from WECI. The total project budget was estimated to be $100,000. So we will be receiving 50% or $50,000 from the province to finance this project. And I guess I should also mention that in addition to the dam safety review, this project will also include an engineering study and design of a new safety boom for this dam. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Euro. John Inglis.
I think that works. Is there a possibility that the safety review will lead to downstream requirement for a rebuild of that dam? And if so, who would pay for it?
To rebuild the dam? I don't think we have been monitoring, right? We have been completing dam inspections every year, and there are no major structural deficiencies identified at Carlton Place. So overall, you know, the structure is in a decent shape. There are some minor deficiencies, mostly in respect to public safety, you know, like the railings and, you know, public basically accessing this structure. You know, we've seen children, you know, jumping off the dam to the river in the summer and whatnot. So there are some safety concerns, obviously, that will need to be addressed, but we don't anticipate any major issues. Obviously, that's just an anticipation, but yeah, the structure is concrete structure. It's about 50 years old and in a relatively good shape.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Yura? Thank you very much, Yura.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the appointment of the PAC members. And I'll hand the floor over to Sally.
Okey doke. So as you'll recall, when we did the review of our committee structures earlier this year, we agreed to create a new public advisory committee to support MPCA in implementing the Mississippi River Watershed Plan. And so earlier in the early summer, we did a promotional campaign and it was fairly comprehensive. We, of course, reached out to former members as well as all the organizations that we had participated in the previous exercise where we're actually developing the watershed plan, as well as other, you know, organizations like MNRF and those key provincial partners and others who we'd like to work with. And we did a social media campaign. We didn't get a lot of applications and we didn't get the mix of applications that we were hoping for. You know, when we structured the committee, we had identified various sectors of the economy and wanting cross-representation across the watershed. But at the end of the day, you get what, you know, who expresses interest and shows up, as it were. So these are the people who applied. We reviewed all of them and they're all good quality candidates in their own right. Thankfully, they do represent a good cross-section of the watershed in terms of geography. They do have varied backgrounds. There is probably a greater emphasis on sort of lake association and environmental issues. But I think what we have here is a dedicated group of people who are knowledgeable in watershed and water management issues and will provide a good sounding board, which at the end of the day is what we're looking for. These people aren't decision makers. This isn't a committee where they have decision-making responsibilities. So in terms of the mix of people acting as a sounding board and helping us to understand and potentially implement measures, because these people are also active in their community. These are the people who we would potentially partner with and their organizations to implement some of the measures. So I think that it's a really good slate of people to bring forward to the board for approval. The one thing I flagged in the report is that Ed Giffen no longer lives in North Frontenac, but he was a longtime resident and business owner on Crotch Lake for many, many years. He has sat on any number of advisory committees, both for this board as well as at the provincial level, including, you know, hunting and angling and recreational tourism and the like. So I think he's well worth including in the slate of people to participate on the board. The fact that he's coming back to us indicates his dedication and interest in continuing his relationship with the watershed and with MPCA. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Sally. Before we go into any questions, we do have a recommended motion. The recommended motion is that the Board of Directors appoint members to the Mississippi Watershed Public Advisory Committee as set out in this report. Could I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Krista Lowry, seconded by Phil Sweetman. Any questions for Sally or comments? Phil, go ahead.
What size of a committee did you expect if you had all of the representations that you wanted?
I believe the terms of reference said up to 10.
That's, that's what I thought. And could I ask, there was one person that apparently you didn't approve of, who's the owner of, is it an appropriate question to ask? There's a background in engineering and stuff like that. Just, we already had that as somebody else from that area, or? under
I'm not
Keating?
sure what you're referring to because
Well,
we recommended everybody who applied.
Oh, under Katie Sarah, it says no.
Oh, sorry. The bracketed refers to whether they sat on the former PAC.
Oh.
Oh, if
okay.
they're returning members. Sorry for that
I was
confusion,
on the
Phil.
lookout. I just don't want to get into weird, you know.
No worries.
Go ahead, Bev.
I'm just wondering if you would accept late applicants if anyone is interested in joining.
I think that's at the discretion of the board. I certainly have no objection to that.
Okay, thank you.
Second, I've got John Carew, and then I'll come back to the boardroom.
Thanks, Chair. I think Sally has captured the selection process very well, and I think another observation that's useful to keep in mind, we could still invite other presentations to the Public Advisory Committee as well. So if there was a feeling that a presentation or a presence from a particular sector or organization will be beneficial, that would still be within the remit of the Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I saw Stephen.
Might be a silly question. I have seen public advisory committees sometimes get out of control a little bit. Any thoughts to how that might work?
So two or three things. One, John Crow is the co-chair. So there's a board member on the committee. It's not a committee run by itself. Number two, we're fairly prescriptive in the role in terms of the first meeting is going to be in the lead up to budget. Tell us what you think, you think our priorities for implementation should be for this budget. And then once the budget comes to the board, I'll obviously be carrying forward what the PAC recommends. It's the decision of this board whether to implement that. And then post budget approval, we go back to the PAC and say, here's what has been approved for this fiscal or for the foreseeable future. Can you help us work to implement? So it's really two questions: help us make a decision and set priorities, or help us to implement and promote awareness.
Were there any other questions? I thought I saw another hand up. John, go ahead.
Just a comment. I'm really pleased and kind of proud that 3 of the 6 members are from North Frontenac, if you include Ed. You might be underselling Katie. I believe she might be the dean of Sir Sanford Fleming in Perth, in Peterborough. Oh, by the way, her dad is our public works manager, and her grandfather was public works manager. It's a long history.
So she's left the family trade. Phil.
The one thing I note is, is there any specific one of these that really represents the Indigenous people? And if not, could, as John suggested, could we invite people to do that, to fulfill that role? It seems to be really an important part of this federal government. I was following the approval of the nuclear disposal thing at Chalk River or wherever up that way, and they've, even after they've done quite a bit of consultation, now they're sending it back, and you've got another 6 or 9 months to consult with Indigenous people before they get the final approval. So if we could bring that in at this time, it may save a lot of trouble. And the Indigenous people sometimes know stuff about the community that we don't. Thank you.
So one of the things I'll be pretending on later on is the status of our Indigenous engagement plan. One of the things that we found generally, and we're not alone in this, is that because of federal and other legislation prescribing Indigenous engagement on various projects, the communities themselves are overwhelmed by requests to provide feedback. And so this was compounded during COVID. So we're admittedly at this time just taking a very measured approach, trying to work at the speed and engaging with the Indigenous communities at their pace and meet them where they're at, rather than trying to make an extra demand on them and say, you know, can you appoint somebody to this committee? Because we know from the challenges we've had just engaging with them on the watershed plan that they are totally strapped and under-resourced. So that's the approach that we've taken so far. But I think, you know, there may be a time where we'll want to revisit that, and they themselves might want to volunteer that could they put somebody on the committee. And so we're looking at this point to follow their lead.
Thanks, Sally. Any other questions or comments before we go to vote on the main motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the appointments to the Public Advisory Committee, please raise your hands. Motion carries. Item 5 on our agenda, we have a budget control report, and I would like to welcome Stacy Millard, our new treasurer, to the boardroom to deliver that report. We also have our new research clerk, Pam Tapley, has joined us in the room too. I don't know if you can see her on the camera. No, you can't. But she's just off to my right, diligently taking minutes for the meeting. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to Stacy. Go ahead, Stacy. Sally's going to do it.
We agreed that for the first meeting that I would sort of demonstrate how it's done, and Stacy will absolutely answer any questions you have that she's able to. This is actually only her third full week on the job. So we're going to cut her some slack right now. Okie doke. So, but please bear in mind, this is reflective of the work that she's been doing. So, so what you have in front of you is our budget control report up to the end of July. Everything's looking pretty good for this time of year. Some of the numbers are under what we would expect, but and some are slightly higher. And so we flagged those for you. As expected, the insurance premiums went much higher than what we had budgeted. And so that's why the corporate services numbers are slightly above what we'd anticipate. Unfortunately, we are still waiting for our Section 39 provincial transfer. I've been in email contact with them over the past couple of weeks, asking them when we're going to get it. And so I've been promised soon, in quotation marks. The user fees and contract revenues are higher than projected. And this isn't so much actually a reflection of increase in applications, but more so the nature of the applications. So we've seen a lot of higher value applications come in this year, and that's why you're seeing the higher than projected revenues for this time. We've actually started to see a gradual slowing down of the number of planning and permit applications. So the cooling off in that sector is starting to make, itself known. What doesn't show here, and which I flagged in the report, is the fact that we were not successful in organizing a fundraising campaign with the Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust this year to enable payback next year of the operating reserve for whatever we're drawing down to support our contribution under that federal Conservation Ontario ECCC grant. Now, as it happens, spending under that line item has been under what we had projected. And that's due to the challenges we've had in terms of making progress on some of those projects. And I'll be reporting out on that under separate item coming up down in the fall. But I am not optimistic that we will get a fundraising campaign. That's the more important message. It's not that we just didn't get one going. I'm not convinced we're going to get one going with Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust because they've just recently lost their executive director who was trying to drive that campaign within the organization. I don't think they have the organizational capacity at this point and won't have for several months to come. So this is something that I'm going to delve into a bit more and do further analysis on the impact on our operating reserve, because there's other work Stacy and I need to do on that for around the upcoming job evaluation and market assessments that we're doing on the various positions in the organization. You'll recall the last phase of that work is happening literally next week. So when we come back to the Finance and Admin Committee next month, we'll have the analysis on the operating reserve, not just from this, which I've flagged, but also the outcome of those job evaluations and market assessments. So that when we come to the board in October, everybody will have a clear position, understanding of where we're at to help inform decisions about the development and approval of the 2023 budget. So happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Phil. And if you could stop sharing the screen, that way I can see everyone. We'll go to Phil and then we'll go to John online.
Just, could you remind me of what the push was to get, why we were spending this money? Was it not that we got 50% grant from somebody else? And what was it? And I have to confess, didn't do much homework here. What was the project that we proceeded with?
So there's 3 projects that got approved by Conservation Ontario using the Environment Canada funding. And you're correct, they were 50% funded projects. The first is the new ALICE program being delivered in Lanark, which is the agricultural program supporting farmers and implementing programs on their properties. The second one was a wetland restoration project on the Carp River, just upstream of the village of Carp. And that was one of the projects that we weren't able to proceed with. We contacted the landowners in the area who had Ducks Unlimited, and we had been approached several years ago. And this was our second foray or potentially our third foray. And they still weren't interested, or not everybody was interested. So we couldn't move forward with that one. And then the third project is one that we're actively working on right now, as we are with the ALICE project, is the land conservation plan. And this is a combination project. Under our new regulation, we have to do a land conservation land strategy. So this is like an enhanced version of that, wherein we're working with partners like Ducks, like the city, like Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust to identify potential lands for targeted stewardship activity in the future. Potential acquisition by any of the parties. So the city has put money on the table that it would be willing to bring to, towards acquisition of a property, as has Ducks, as has the federal government. So it's a fairly comprehensive project, and we're still very much in the planning stages, but what we haven't been able to do is identify many properties that they're able to secure. So Ducks Unlimited is actually working quite concertedly right now on looking at properties up in the Carp Hills. And in fact, Janet Mason has been helping them on that. And we're hopeful that we might identify a property that the city and Ducks can secure with the support of the federal funding before the end of this fiscal, which is March 31st.
Thanks for that update. Could you sort of enlarge on your pessimism about the Madawaska Trust? They used to have some good leadership and were quite aggressive. In the future, you don't see that there? Or is it just while they get a new person that
My understanding is their recruitment process may take several months.
but after that, they might be back on track again? Might
We
be.
can hope so, yeah.
Thank you.
John Crew.
Thanks, Chair. And also on the issue of the fundraising. It was commented by me earlier that, if one did find some difficulty with fundraising, there still is the opportunity for professional fundraisers to assist. So my question to Sally and company is whether or not that option is being pursued. I mean, it's something that it wouldn't have to be prohibitively expensive. There are people who are very good at it and very proficient at it. And I think it would be a shame to have that fundraising not occur because of those internal organizational problems, which I understand, but there are alternate ways to deliver.
So I would say, I mean, Carolyn's departure is relatively recent. And until I was made aware of that, I was still optimistic that we'd get a fundraising campaign off the ground. But at this point, I haven't really had the opportunity, John, to pursue that. I think it's an excellent idea. I don't know that there's the organizational capacity within MMLT more broadly to partner with them. So if we were to retain professional support, I think we might just do it through our own foundation because I'm concerned that the decision-making mechanisms within that organization are not timely enough to meet the needs of our organization.
Fair enough.
Any other questions for Sally? Krista?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the last comment here about where do we go from here? And if it is that we need to move ahead without the land trust at this time, I'd be really interested in pursuing what other options might look like. I had a very, very brief conversation with a couple representatives from some of the other CAs in Eastern Ontario at the OEMC conference, I think it was last week. And I didn't get enough information to be able to say, hey, you know, this is what's going on there. I'm sure you're probably very familiar with it though, Sally. I feel like these are really important projects, and certainly, you know, the flavor in the community is one of wanting to restore, wanting to be conscious of climate action initiatives that can be taken. So I'd be very interested to see what other options we might be able to put in play for 2023. And if we're able to partner with the Land Trust moving forward, I mean, that would be great, but I understand your point about capacity right now. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Krista. Janet?
I think, Sally, maybe it'd be useful to clarify that there were quite a number of properties looked at, but their landowners in all cases across multiple places in the watershed were simply not interested. And so it may be from a fundraising perspective this year that we don't need to replace the operating reserve money to the extent that we had thought. However, it doesn't mean that next year there can't be a renewal of looking at more properties, in which case fundraising would again need to be looked at. Is that all true statements?
If I could just addendum that then, largely that's correct. However, at no time was MVCA going to be putting out money for acquisition per se. Our monies were mainly to support legal fees, to do title searches, surveys, you know, those sort of any in-house costs. But where we are out of pocket this year is for consulting fees. We did retain a consultant to support us on that land conservation plan that's required. So currently, I think the budget for that's around 40,000, and I do anticipate us, you know, being out of pocket for 50% of that. So that's what the deficit is looking like, shaping up now.
And so we do, after this year, have another 2 years. Yes.
Well, the fiscal years it's a federal fiscal, so the federal fiscals always end March 31st.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Sally? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Yeah. Okay. So everybody who's here needs to stay. Okay. So for the next item, we need to go into camera, and So I need somebody to support this motion that the committee move to in-camera session for discussion of the following matter, in which is information explicitly supplied in confidence to the authority by Canada, province, or a territory, or a crown agency or any of them. And be it further resolved that Sally McIntyre. Yeah, that Sally McIntyre, well, basically the staff who are currently in the room remain in the room. So basically what we need to do is to stop recording the meeting while we move into camera. So could I have a mover to go in camera? Krista, seconded by Kirby. All in favor?
How do we know there's not people in the room or that Wahoo's not listening in or something?
Yeah, the staff can control who's actually in the room itself. They can move people into a waiting room if they need to, which is what we usually do with staff. If they need to be taken out of the room, they're still in the Zoom call. They're just not in the actual meeting itself. Yeah, so no one's there, and you'd see them here, and we'll just end the recording.
So Steve, if you look at the top where my cursor is, I'm pressing stop recording. So as soon as I do that, are you sure you want to stop recording?